A grand conclave of spheres hung in a void of its own making, a perfect non-space where the light of 1,000 captured suns was woven into the very architecture of the chamber. Here, suspended in gravitational zones calibrated to the unique biology of each representative, sat the minds that governed a quarter of the galaxy. The air, or what passed for it in this meticulously controlled environment, was thick with a silence that was not peaceful but taut, like a string stretched to its breaking point. At the center of this silence was the specter of a single species, a race of ephemeral, soft-bodied creatures from a forgotten spiral arm who had, in the span of a few galactic cycles, become the most profound and terrifying mystery the Conclave had ever faced: humanity. Xylos of the Cygnian Ascendancy, a being of crystalline lattice and captured stellar energy, felt the tension as a dissonant chime in his own resonant structure. His form, a complex arrangement of light and thought, pulsed with a low, anxious frequency. Before him, the holographic representation of the known galaxy turned slowly, a river of stars and nebulae. But it was the void between the stars that held their attention, the dark corridors where the human vessels moved. They called them warships, but the term felt inadequate, a primitive label for something that defied every known principle of physics and warfare. The human ships did not burn through space-time with the crude violence of hyperdrives or rip it open with wormholes. They simply were. One moment, a sector was empty, confirmed by a legion of deep space augurs. The next, a human presence would be there, a cold spot in the universe, a shadow that did not block light but seemed to absorb the very concept of it. They emitted no energy, no radiation, no gravitational wake. They were ghosts, their existence confirmed only by their undeniable presence and the chilling silence that surrounded them. "They are a plague of shadows," Grand Marshal Vorlag of the Cathar Dominion boomed, his voice a translated gravelly roar that grated against the chamber's perfect acoustics. His immense, carapaced form shifted in its grav field, the plates of his natural armor scraping together with a sound like grinding continents. "They expand without conquest, they build without announcement, and they travel without means. Every law of the cosmos that we have painstakingly uncovered over millennia, they mock with their very existence. We have sent diplomatic overtures. They are met with polite, meaningless acknowledgments. We have sent reconnaissance fleets. Our ships return with sensor logs full of nothing, their crews driven to madness by staring into a void that is not empty, but absent." Vorlag gestured with a pincer-like claw at the galactic map. Red markers representing Cathar patrol routes blinked nervously near the edges of a spreading, amorphous territory colored in a soft, unassuming blue, human space. It was not an empire in any recognizable sense. It had no defined borders, no fortified chokepoints. It was a scattering of worlds, many of them considered uninhabitable by the Conclave's standards, all linked by these impossible, invisible pathways. "They call their technology dark matter displacement," a different voice chimed in, this one belonging to the chief syllogist of the Altari technocracy, a gelatinous being floating within a containment sphere, its thoughts projected as shimmering, complex equations. "The term is a nonsense. Dark matter is a gravitational constant, a cosmic glue. It cannot be harnessed, cannot be shaped. To claim to build ships from it is akin to claiming one can build a fortress from the concept of time. It is a lie, a deception to mask a power we cannot comprehend." Xylos listened, his own thoughts a cascade of silent light. The technocracy saw a puzzle of physics. The Cathar saw a threat to be neutralized. His own people, the Cygnians, saw a historical anomaly of terrifying proportions. They were the galaxy's archivists, the quiet observers who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They understood that the nature of a species, expansion, was a direct reflection of its soul. The Cathar had expanded through glorious, bloody conquest. The Altari through the sterile acquisition of knowledge. The mercantile guilds through a web of commerce and debt. But the humans, they simply settled. They would arrive at a world, a barren rock, a methane giant's moon, a planet scorched by a dying star, and they would stay. They asked for nothing, threatened no one, and shared nothing. Their silence was more unnerving than any declaration of war. What kind of species builds the most advanced transportation system ever conceived? One that seemingly violates causality itself, and uses it to occupy worlds that no one else wants. "Perhaps we misinterpret their intentions," a soft, melodic voice whispered. It was the luminary of the shroud, a being so ancient. It had no physical form, its presence merely a gentle warping of light and a feeling of immense, sorrowful peace. The luminary rarely spoke, and when it did, the entire conclave held its breath. "You see a weapon in their silence, a tool of war, but what if it is a shield? What if they are not hiding their presence from us, but hiding from something else? There are silences in the void far older and deeper than that of humanity. Vorlag snorted a harsh, guttural sound of contempt. A shield. They have constructed an armada of these absences. They drift at the edge of our territories, silent and watching. It is the posture of a predator, not a hermit. They are assessing our strength, our defenses. When they are ready, they will strike, and our fleets, for all their power, will be firing into nothingness. We will be dismantled system by system, our worlds isolated and consumed, and we will never even see the blade that fells us. I say again, we must act. We must force their hand. We must issue an ultimatum, reveal the nature of their technology, or we will sterilize one of their settled worlds as a demonstration of our resolve. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of dissent and support. The idea was barbaric, but the fear was palpable. To attack a silent, peaceful world? It was against every tenet of the Conclave's charter. But to do nothing, to wait for the silent fleet to make its move, felt like a slow, collective suicide. Xylos felt his own internal light dim. The Cathar solution was brutal, but it was born of a primal, understandable fear. The unknown was a poison, and humanity was the most potent unknown the galaxy had ever produced. They were a species that had reached for the stars not with engines of fire and fury, but with whispers and shadows. They had looked at the fundamental forces of the universe, and instead of shouting at them with reactors and particle beams, had learned to listen to their quietest secrets. He focused on the data streams flowing through his crystalline mind. Reports from listening posts, analyses of the scant human transmissions they could intercept, mostly cultural broadcasts, filled with strange, melancholic music and complex philosophical narratives. There was no military chatter, no logistical coordination, no hint of a vast war machine. It was a civilization that seemed profoundly at peace with itself, yet it possessed a power that could bring the galaxy to its knees. This contradiction was the heart of their terror. A species that could build such a weapon, but chose not to use it, was either impossibly enlightened or terrifyingly patient. An ultimatum would be an act of galactic suicide, Xylos projected, his own voice a series of perfectly harmonized chimes that translated into a calm, resonant tone. All eyes, or their equivalent sensory organs, turned to him. The Signians rarely took a firm stance, preferring the neutrality of the observer. To attack them is to confirm their fears of us if they have any. It would turn a potential misunderstanding into an inevitable war. A war we, by the Grand Marshal's own admission, cannot fight. Our weapons are designed to destroy matter and energy. How do we fight a vessel that is defined by its lack of both? Then what do you propose, Archivist? Vorlag growled. That we sit here and weave theories while the shadows lengthen, that we wait until our suns are blotted out by their silent ships. I propose we do what we have always done when faced with a new intelligence, Xylos replied, his light pulsing with conviction. We seek to understand. We have sent automated probes and formal missives. We have not sent a true envoy. We have not stood before them being to being and asked our questions directly. We have hidden behind our protocols and our fear. Perhaps it is time we showed them the respect of a direct and open inquiry. The chamber fell into a contemplative silence, the weight of Xylos's words settling upon them. It was a simple, logical suggestion, yet it felt like the most dangerous proposition of all. To meet with them would be to admit them into the heart of galactic politics, to give the mystery a face and a voice. It was to invite the ghost into their home. Before the debate could resume, a new light blinked at the central podium. It was a priority signal, one that overrode all other discussion. A universal icon for an incoming transmission from a non-conclave species. The origin signature was, for the first time, clear, unmasked, and direct. It came from the human home system, a world they called Earth. The chamber went utterly still. The silence was no longer taut. It was a vacuum, cold and absolute. They had spent cycles debating what to do about the humans, and now the humans were calling them. The chief syllogist of the Altari manipulated a field of light, accepting the transmission. A message unfurled in the center of the chamber, translated instantly into the core languages of the conclave. It was not a demand, not a threat, not a boast. It was a simple, courteous text. To the assembled members of the Galactic Conclave, we, the representatives of humanity, have observed your deliberations concerning our presence. We understand your concerns and your fear of the unknown. We believe that direct communication is the most effective path to mutual understanding. We formally request permission to send an ambassador to address the conclave in person. We await your decision. Peacefully, Ambassador Alara Vance. The message was a masterstroke of diplomacy, both disarming and deeply unsettling. We have observed your deliberations. The implication was clear. Their most secure, most secret chamber was transparent to the humans. Their fears, their arguments, their proposed acts of aggression, all of it had been an open book. Vorlag's carapace seemed to shrink slightly, the arrogant bluster draining from his posture. They had been debating whether to knock on the door of a fortress, only to find the inhabitants had been in the room with them the entire time, listening patiently. Xylos felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The humans were not just technologically superior, they were strategically and psychologically light years ahead. They had allowed the conclave to exhaust itself in fear and speculation, and then, at the peak of their anxiety, had offered a simple, peaceful conversation. It was a move of such profound confidence that it dwarfed any military posturing. The vote was a mere formality. There was no other choice. To refuse now would be an admission of pure, irrational terror. Permission was granted. A single human vessel was cleared for approach to the conclave's nexus. The galaxy held its breath and waited for the ghost to take form. The human ship that arrived was nothing like the terrifying absences that haunted the star lanes. It was a physical object, elegant and graceful, a sliver of polished obsidian and soft internal light. It moved with a quiet dignity, its engines emitting only a faint harmonic shimmer that was more like music than propulsion. It was a vessel designed for peace, a deliberate and powerful statement. It docked at the diplomatic spire and a single life form disembarked. Ambassador Alara Vance entered the conclave of spheres, and the collected might of the galaxy studied her with an intensity that could crack planets. She was small by galactic standards, frail, a bipedal creature of soft tissue and a remarkably expressive face. She wore simple dark blue robes, unadorned with any symbols of rank or power. She moved with a calm, deliberate grace, her eyes sweeping across the assembled aliens not with fear or arrogance, but with a quiet, genuine curiosity. Her grav field activated, lifting her to the central podium, and she stood before them, a solitary, unassuming figure against the backdrop of captured suns. The silence returned, deeper than ever. This was the face of the galaxy's greatest fear. This was the creature whose people had mastered the void itself. Vorlag was the first to break the stillness, his voice a low growl of contained fury. Human, you stand accused of cosmic trespass and technological intimidation. Your silent armada hangs like a death sentence over every world in this conclave. We demand an explanation. What is the purpose of your dark matter warships? What is the nature of your ultimate ambition? Ambassador Vance met the Grand Marshal's glare without flinching. Her expression was one of serene composure. When she spoke, her voice was calm, melodic, and carried a warmth that was utterly at odds with the cold technology she represented. Grand Marshal Vorlag, we have no warships. The statement was so simple, so direct, that it stunned the chamber into confusion. Vorlag bristled. Do not play games with us, human. We have tracked your vessels, countless phantoms that slip through our sensor nets that mock the very laws of physics. They are weapons of unimaginable stealth and power. Do you deny their existence? I do not deny the existence of our vessels, the ambassador replied, her voice remaining perfectly even. I deny their classification. You call them warships because your understanding of power is rooted in the ability to project force. You see a new technology and you immediately ask, how can this be used to kill? How can it be used to conquer? It is a logical assumption given the history of most starfaring civilizations, but it is, in this case, incorrect. She raised a hand, and a holographic display bloomed in the air before her. It was not a weapon schematic. It was a beautiful, impossibly complex diagram of space-time foam, the quantum flux at the very foundation of reality. You call our technology dark matter displacement, she continued. This, too, is a misnomer born from a translation of a concept for which your languages have no equivalent. We do not displace dark matter. We do not use it as fuel or a we. Pawn, we use it as a medium like a perfectly still, silent ocean. Our ships are not ships in the way you understand them. They are resonance engines. Xylos felt his crystalline structure vibrate with a new frequency, not of fear, but of profound intellectual curiosity. Resonance engines. The term was poetic, evocative. For millennia, Vance explained, her eyes moving from one representative to the next, her gaze lingering on each with an unnerving sense of personal connection. Your species, like ours once did, have been shouting at the universe. Your hyperdrives tear through the fabric of spacetime. Your wormholes punch holes in it. Your particle accelerators scream at the subatomic level. Every form of advanced technology you possess is based on the principle of overwhelming a natural force with a greater, artificial one. The result is a galaxy filled with noise, a constant, chaotic roar of energy and radiation and gravitational turbulence that drowns out everything else. The holographic display shifted. It now showed a representation of the galaxy, but instead of stars, it was a storm of chaotic, jagged lines, the combined technological noise of the conclave civilizations. My ancestors discovered something, a truth hidden beneath that noise, a fundamental underlying rhythm to the cosmos, a vibration that has existed since the first moment of creation. It is a pattern woven into the very structure of spacetime. We call it the cosmic background rhythm, or in our more poetic moments, the true beat. The phrase hung in the air, resonating with a strange power. The true beat. Xylos felt a shiver of understanding. The cryptic words of the luminary echoed in his mind. There are silences in the void far older and deeper than that of humanity. Our resonance engines were not designed for war, Vance said, her voice softening with something that sounded like reverence. They were designed to listen. They do not move through space in the conventional sense. They attune themselves to the true beat. They gently shift their own quantum frequency to match the natural rhythm of spacetime, allowing them to transition from one point to another without creating any dissonance. No energy wake, no gravitational shear, no temporal distortion. They move as silently as a thought, because in a quantum sense, that is what they are doing, thinking themselves from one place to another. The revelation washed over the conclave. It was so simple and yet so profoundly world-altering. The humans had not built a weapon. They had built an instrument, a celestial tuning fork. Their entire technological development had diverged onto a path no one else had even conceived of, not a path of power and force, but one of harmony and observation. Their silence wasn't a threat. It was a necessity. It was the only way to hear the universe's song. You have built an armada of listening posts, the Altari syllogist projected, its equations flickering with disbelief. An entire fleet dedicated to cosmic eavesdropping? For what purpose? What is there to hear? Everything, Vance replied simply. She looked directly at Xylos. Archivist, your people have spent eons chronicling the history of civilizations. You have recorded their wars, their politics, their art. We are trying to chronicle the history of the universe itself. The true beat is not static. It carries the echoes of everything that has ever happened. The birth of galaxies, the collapse of stars, the formation of the great voids. It is the ultimate historical record, the ultimate truth. Vorlag, for the first time, seemed at a loss for words. His entire worldview, built on the primacy of strength and the inevitability of conflict, was being dismantled by a quiet philosopher. If this is true, if you are merely scholars, then why do your vessels line our borders? Why do you watch us? Because your noise affects the beat, Vance said, her tone now tinged with a solemn gravity. The more you expand, the more you shout with your technologies, the harder it is for us to hear. We are not watching you. We are shielding our instruments from your dissonance. We have established our worlds in places you consider worthless because those areas are quiet, far from the chaotic energies of your empires. We sought only to be left alone in our studies. To prove her point, an offer was made. A single, direct sensory link from the Conclave's own primary auger array to one of the human resonance engines currently positioned at the edge of Cathar space. A chance to listen just for a moment to what the humans heard. The risk was immense. It could be a trick, a viral signal, a weaponized data stream. But the potential reward, the chance to verify a claim that would reshape their understanding of existence, was too great to ignore. After a tense, silent vote, the Conclave agreed. Xylos felt the data stream as it was rooted through his own being, a conduit for the Conclave. He braced himself for a blah. Scent of psychic energy or a logic bomb. Instead, he felt a quiet. The chaotic noise of the galaxy, a background hum he had been aware of his entire existence, suddenly faded away, filtered out by the human technology. And in its place there it was. It was not a sound. It was a feeling, a pulse, a rhythm that resonated in the very core of his crystalline form in the fabric of spacetime itself. It was the slow, steady, incalculable beat of the universe. It was a rhythm of immense and heartbreaking beauty, a pattern of absolute order and harmony underlying all the chaos he had ever known. It was the feeling of a sleeping god's heartbeat. In that single moment of contact, Xylos understood. He felt the echo of a supernova that had died 1 billion years before his species was born. He felt the gentle gravitational waltz of galaxies forming. He felt the profound, deep, and utter peace of a cosmos that was not a battlefield, but a symphony. The link was severed. A collective gasp, a wave of pure, unadulterated awe swept through the conclave of spheres. In a single instant, the fear was gone, replaced by a sense of humility so profound it was almost painful. They had been rampaging through a cathedral, deaf to the choir, and had mistaken the quiet reverence of another worshipper for a threat. Grand Marshal Vorlag was trembling, his massive form rocked by the experience. The warrior who had seen 1,000 battles and felt no fear was humbled by a single, silent pulse. We did not know," he rasped, the words catching in his throat. "We have been blind and deaf." Xylos turned his light toward Ambassador Vance. His internal chimes formed a new kind of expression, one of sorrow and deep respect. "You have given us a gift beyond measure, Ambassador. You have shown us the soul of the universe, and in our ignorance we threaten to silence you." "Understanding is the foundation of peace," Vance said, her expression softening into what Xylos could only interpret as a sad smile. "We did not come here to boast or to chastise. We came because we knew your fear would eventually lead you to an action you would regret. We came to prevent a tragedy born of misunderstanding." A new sense of unity began to dawn in the chamber. The political squabbles, the ancient rivalries, they all seemed so small now, so petty in the face of what they had just experienced. Humanity was not an enemy. They were pioneers of an entirely new frontier, not of space, but of perception. They were the galaxy's consciousness, its quiet, listening ear. The luminary of the shroud's light pulsed warmly, a silent affirmation. An alliance was no longer a question of politics. It felt like a cosmic necessity, a partnership between the galaxy's hand and its ear. "We owe you a debt," Xylos stated, his voice resonating with the full support of the Cygnian ascendancy. "And we would be honored to learn how to listen, to help you in your great work." Other voices rose in agreement. The Cathar, humbled and shamed, offered their protection. The Voltari, their immense analytical abilities. A new era was dawning for the galaxy, one of collaboration, one where the goal was not expansion but comprehension. Ambassador Vance inclined her head in a gesture of gratitude, but the sad smile did not leave her face. If anything, it deepened. A shadow passed over her features, a hint of a burden far greater than the conclave's misplaced fear. "Your offer is more welcome than you can possibly know," she said, her voice dropping, losing its warmth and taking on a chilling seriousness. "Because we did not come here only to allay your fears. We came to ask for your help. Our great work has changed. We are no longer just listening. We are watching for an end." A new hologram materialized in the center of the chamber. It was a map of the galaxy, but from a different perspective, showing the vast emptiness of intergalactic space. And from one direction, from a point of origin so distant it was in a part of the cosmos they had never even mapped, something was coming. It was not a fleet. It was not an energy wave. The hologram depicted it as a slowly expanding patch of perfect, absolute black. "For as long as we have been listening," Vance continued, her voice now a near whisper that carried to every corner of the silent chamber, "the true beat has been constant, a perfect, unwavering rhythm. It is the baseline of our reality. But for the last few decades, we have detected a change, a subtle but accelerating dampening. The beat is growing fainter." She pointed to the expanding blackness on the map. "This is the cause. We do not know what it is. It is not an object or a force in any way we can define. Our instruments can barely perceive it. It is a nullification, a field that erases the fundamental resonance of spacetime. Where it passes, the true beat ceases. The song of the universe is silenced. We call it the Great Silence." The members of the conclave stared, froze. And the existential terror they had felt for humanity was a pale, insignificant shadow compared to this. This was not a threat of war or conquest. This was a threat to existence itself, a creeping entropy that did not destroy, but erased. "It is expanding at a significant fraction of the speed of light," Vance stated, her voice devoid of all emotion now, a clinical report of the apocalypse. "It has already consumed entire clusters of galaxies that you have never seen, galaxies whose light has not yet reached you. In a few thousand cycles, it will reach the edge of our own galaxy, and it will not stop." Xylos looked at the map, then at the calm, resolute human ambassador. He finally understood. He understood the desperate, quiet expansion to barren worlds. They weren't just seeking silence. They were spreading out, creating listening posts across the galaxy to get a clearer picture of the approaching doom. They were building a network of sensors to track the death of reality. Their dark matter warships were not warships at all, but now they would have to be. They were the only things in the known universe capable of even perceiving the threat, the only technology built on the principles that were being erased. This is what the luminary meant, Xylo's breathed, the realization of physical shock. The silence that is older and deeper. The luminary's light flared, a soft, sorrowful pulse. A song cannot last forever. The void always waits to reclaim its own. Vorlag, the great warrior, looked smaller than ever before, a child facing an unnameable darkness. "Can it be fought?" he asked, his voice filled with a desperate, uncharacteristic plea. "We do not know," Ambassador Vance replied, finally letting the full weight of her people's burden show on her face. It was an expression of profound, soul-deep exhaustion. "How do you fight the cessation of being? How do you wage war on nothing? We have spent generations listening to the universe. Now we must learn how to make it scream back. We have the instruments to perceive the threat, the means to travel in its presence without being torn apart by the dissonance at its edge. But we lack the scale, the industrial might, the diverse perspectives of a galactic community. We came here to stop a war, yes, but we also came here to recruit you for a new one. A war not for territory or resources, but for the right of the universe to exist." The conclave of spheres born to mediate disputes between empires was silent. The captured suns that lit the chamber seemed to flicker, their light suddenly fragile, temporary. The political boundaries on the galactic map, the symbols of power and history, all faded into irrelevance. There was only the galaxy, a single beautiful island of existence, and the silent, inexorable tide of nothingness that was coming to claim it. Xylos looked at the human, this frail creature who carried the knowledge of cosmic doom with such impossible grace. Their species had been the galaxy's greatest mystery, its greatest fear. Now they were its only hope. Their quiet, philosophical journey into the heart of reality had accidentally made them the designated sentinels for a horror no one else could even see. Their dark matter ships, born of a desire for peace and understanding, had become the only shield against an absolute end. The great irony settled upon him, cold and heavy as a dying star. The entire galaxy had been afraid of a new voice, a new song they did not understand. And all that time, the true enemy was never the sound, but the silence that followed. Humanity, the quiet listeners, had been the first to hear it coming, and now they had to teach a galaxy of shouters how to fight it. The war for survival had begun, not with a bang, but with the terrifying realization that the universe's heart was slowly, quietly ceasing to beat.